Roxanne. I'm a bread baker, among other things, board member at Spiral Living Center. And today we're doing, virtual classes. So I'm going to show you guys my bread method and how it can go from loaf to cinnamon roll. So come on over and have a look. I started this last night and I made too much of it, so it overflowed. That's why this looks like crazy. But look how alive that is. And this is my mother starter here, which I just made from regular yeast, sugar, and white flour. I don't generally put salt in it at this stage. I'll salt it later. So that's starter one. And then, well, right before we get started, I'm running hot water into this to warm up this clay and clean this out. I have put the mother dough in the bowl here. It's a little larger of a recipe, but for argument's sake, let's say we just started with our normal first recipe, and now I'm going to add the equal amount of starter to flour. So here we go. Get me a nice wooden spoon. And I go with a couple little small stirs here just to keep that flour from going everywhere. Look at that starter. Oh boy, she is alive. Okay, you must not forget salt. Unsalted bread is a bland and sad affair. So I'm going to add that in now. Okay. And that'll find its way through everything. So we did a loaf in the other video. This is going to be cinnamon rolls. So I'm going to go ahead and add some cinnamon to the actual dough so the dough has a nice flavor. And at this stage, I'll also add, I don't know, it looks like about a half a cup. Let's go 3/4 of a cup of raw sugar in there. You know, it depends on how sweet you like things. You can pump that up. And the more you pump up the sugar, the more you pump up the dough, because the yeast gets fed all that sugar and it really pops. So here we go. We're starting to get thick in here. I think I'm going to maybe add a tiny bit more flour. You can do this in a mixer with a dough hook if you have that kind of a machine. I actually do, but I like doing it by hand sometimes. So let's get that going. So I put just a little more flour in there to get the consistency a little more dough-like, and now I'm doing my folding with my handy-dandy plastic tool that I made from a yogurt container. So this is looking floury enough now on the outside that I can probably touch this with my hands. So I'm going to start doing a little bit of folding and getting some of that flour off the bottom. I've got this dough all nice and incorporated, and now it's time to let it rest. Normally I could put oil on this, but today we're going to be really, really naughty and just start with butter. So make sure this baby's all buttered up. And the butter's kind of warm too, which is, I think, nice for her. I'm going to grill a little bit. Okay. Okay, so I could see this was touching the top of the cloth here. Whoop. There she is, all risen up. Okay, so give it a deflating. So like before in the first video, I'm dividing this in half. Okay, I'm gonna get ready to roll this out. Almost like a pizza to start with. Get a little stretch. Okay, so I'm just gonna roll this baby out. We're making cinnamon rolls. So here we go. And it's a little rubbery in the beginning, so sometimes if you let dough rest a little bit, it gets a little easier to roll out, which I could have done as an illustration. But then this way you won't feel so awkward when yours is springing back and resisting rolling, because that's real normal. So don't feel bad about it. Just don't giggle. So I'm going for a long shape. I got a long counter, but also I want to make a long loaf for my cinnamon rolls. So you'll see in a minute here, and I'm going to get my filling together in just a minute. The ingredient, the butter. So I usually just pour this baby on about, half a cup, but I don't think I'm going to use all that in here. So I just melted a lot, probably more than I needed. And I'm going to use my hand, pardon me. And now we're going to go for a pretty good amount of sugar in here, friends, because this is a sweet roll. And I did not add as much sugar as like a bakery would put in the dough itself. So I'm only putting it on about half of this. And then I'm also going to be very generous on the whole thing with the cinnamon. And I'm going to say we're probably using at least 3 to 6 tablespoons, somewhere in there. Yeah, I'd say more in the neighborhood of 6. And get it off to the edges, because we're going to be cutting this to make the pinwheels in a minute. So we don't want a naked end with no flavor on it. So I'm going to follow my own advice, make sure some of that butter gets over there too. Okay, clean hands. So let's get this baby rolled up, all right? So go tiny, okay? Make these a tiny little roll. Don't go a big giant roll. Stretch kind of as you're rolling, because you want to have lots of swirls in there. So work your way up, stretching this dough as you go. Okay, keep her going. Keep her kind of tucking almost in. So you're stretching, because this dough was not rolled out very thin. So we're going to go like this to make up for that. So we're almost like stretching the dough out as if we rolled it thinner. And then I'm kind of pulling up on these corners so it meets up with our ends a little better. It's not always easy to get everything perfectly squared. So this one might be a little skinnier than the center rolls, might be bigger. That's okay. The little ones to the people that don't want big ones. Okay, pinch this baby shut. And then I'm going to set it on top of the seam here to help it sort of seal shut. Roll her over. Give her a little pat. And then to thicken up these ends, I'll just kind of push the dough up, and then I can almost like stretch the middle and push the ends up and get more of a uniform shape. It's tempting to cut these wide, but cut them about 1 inch. They're going to rise so much on you. And the sharper the knife, the better. Because you really don't want to smash these. You want to cut them, and you want to cut them deftly and quickly. So here we go. We're going to cut these all quick. Then I'm going to show you how I arrange them in the loaf pan. So I've got my nicely buttered, over buttered pan. So I generally put 4 to 5 in here. This is kind of a big guy, so I'll put the small ones at the end and the big guys in the middle. 4 is going to be perfect. You don't want to smash them in there because, like I said, they're going to rise up to the top of this loaf pan, okay? other half of the dough that I started out with, and for this batch I'm going to make loaves for loaves' sake. The reason I didn't want to make loaves out of the cinnamon one was because we were putting butter on it, and butter will make it so when you slice it, it comes apart like a Slinky. So for this, we just want to use a little sugar, nothing like what we used for the rolls, just barely enough to give it a little sweetness, and you know, nothing like what we did before. Definitely make a nice coating, so you know, you've got a good color change. You know, you can see it's brown. Okay, but we're not like layering it on like before. Okay, so here we go. Same as before. We're going to stretch as we roll. And like the cinnamon gets thin as you're rolling, so you'll see it like won't be big clumps in there. Roll this baby up. We have a loaf pan shortage, so this is going to be 2 massive loaves of bread. I might cut a couple of dry rolls off the corner to finish filling one of those pans with cinnamon rolls. So I'll trim the ends off, and we'll make those into not very sweet cinnamon rolls, since we didn't put the butter or sugar level of the last one. But remember, we put some sugar in this actual dough, so it's sweet. So there we go. Crimp her up. Over. Up. For the cinnamon rolls that we're faking out, and then I'm going to cut this baby in half. I could have probably gotten 3 loaves out of this, but I don't have 3 pans, so I'm just going to close the ends of this so it doesn't stick inside the loaf pan. Okay. Okay, good. There we go. Weird thing called monkey bread. People take chunks of rolls and they cut them up into random pieces because we have so many odds and ends here. I'm gonna make this like a cinnamon roll monkey bread. So I'm taking all the rest of the rolls I have left, give them a little chop. I'll leave that one like that. And then I pour a little butter in the bottom, even though the sides are done. And we're gonna arrange these in here, and we're gonna make like a crazy loaf. So all this is going to be all ooey gooey because I'm going to put some sugar and more butter on this. So it's going to be a little bit like a strudely kind of crazy. And it looks really amazing when it's done. So now I'm going to pour even more butter on here. Tuck them all in just to keep them clean and cozy. We're making an egg wash. Scramble up an egg, and I'm going to give it a teaspoon of water. A little looser. So I'm going to give everybody a nice dab. I try to avoid getting it on the sides of the pan because you don't want it to cook around the edges and get your food stuck on there. So try to keep it near the center of your item, away from the edges, which can be a little hard to do on something like this. So work slow. Don't just slather it on there too quick. Okay. Give everybody a nice light little egg wash. This also keeps the surface moist so it can keep rising. So I generally will do this near the end. Right now, this is the end for these cinnamon rolls. We're going to probably let those loaves of bread go a tad longer and get a little larger. But these are ready, and I believe that's because of all the sugar we fed the yeast. So the egg helps the sugar stick up there and caramelize nice. Not too much, it's got plenty of sugar inside, but it gives a nice little crunchy coating on the top, which is really fun when you bite into it. And even though we put sugar on there, this is a naughty item, so we'll put more. 250, and it's going to be for 30 minutes. And I think we got room for Monkey. Okay. See you later.
Ooh. Nice and caramelized.
Okay. So we started out this dough with that mother dough that I showed you in the beginning, and I don't need that much bread or cinnamon rolls, nor do I have the loaves for it, pans for it. So I've got this in here. I can put this in the fridge, feed it some sugar tomorrow or the next day, and this will start to ferment and turn into its own kind of sourdough. It's not the conventional wild type of sourdough that you would get, but it will get sour. So when I go to bake with this in a day or two, I'm going to have a nice tart little culture going by then. So you can see this thing is still really alive right now. So that's one way with leftover dough you can make yourself some sourdough. It's just by actually letting it turn. So there you go.
Spiral Living Center is a 501c3 nonprofit committed to promoting sustainable living skills in the Illinois Valley since 2006. For more info on our work, visit spiralliving.org.